When I was 22, I started seeing a guy who I met on a dating app for a while. His name was Hunter. We went on like 4 dates in the span of a little over a month. At first, things seemed alright. Our first date was a quick coffee date, less than an hour, more of a screening process to make sure he seemed normal. Our second date was at a nearby bar for some drinks. We both got a nice buzz and it was a nice time. Our third date was dinner. And this was when I started to question things. Question if I really clicked with his personality or if I felt like there was something slightly off about him. The date ended with a kiss, still the first and only time we ever kissed, so I convinced myself that because I let him kiss me, things went alright. It wasn't until a couple weeks later that we went on our fourth and final date. We went out for drinks once. Again, however, this time I went into it with a less excited mindset, and I was paying more attention to little quirks in his behavior that I realized were kind of unusual. It's hard to explain exactly what I mean, but some of his mannerisms just gave off antisocial and borderline creepy vibes. He started to drink way too much on this date as well, and he started getting really touchy-feely at the bar, trying to kiss multiple times. I'm not a fan of PDA, especially not when sitting at a bar with people next to me. I politely turned down his advances, and within a few minutes I mentioned I was tired heavily, implying we should leave. He asked for the check, paid it, and then we grabbed our coats and left. As we were walking to our cars, he stopped me and very bluntly asked me if we could go home together. I said, "Not tonight. I'm tired and have worked tomorrow," which was a lie. He shockingly kept trying, saying he'd drag me to work tomorrow. And such, I found it to be absurd whether he was drunk or not. I also wasn't a fan of him drunk. Driving home, I made the decision at that point that I wouldn't see him again. I went to my car in the parking lot across the street and started driving home slowly just because I had a couple drinks in my system. I wasn't drunk, but I was still very cautious. I was also overly alert of my surroundings, looking around for cops, which perhaps is why I picked up on the fact that the same car was behind me. Still, after I made at least 3 turns and at a certain stoplight, I realized it looked like Hunter's car. I texted him, "Are you following me?" He texted back pretty quickly saying, "Yes, I just want to make sure you get home." Okay, I called him, but he wouldn't pick up. This was so weird and quite frankly creepy. I pulled over and texted him to stop following me. "I'm fine." He stopped in the middle of the street for a second, I presume to read my text, and then he drove off. P asked me, he didn't text back, not until I got home and was in bed. He said as follows, "I hope I didn't weird you out tonight. Sorry, I got so drunk. Next time we should do something a little more low-key, like dinner at my place or something." I didn't answer. So the next morning he followed up with, "Oh no, is the vibe dead?" I still decided to wait a bit to respond. Not even 2 hours later, he sends me a question mark. So I decided to reply now. Before it got worse, I said, "Hey, I had a great time getting to know you, but I just think our personalities don't click that much. I also really just want to focus on myself right now. I hope you understand." After this was when the angry text started coming in, the worst of which being, "No, I don't understand. You strung me along for 4 dates to tell me that. How about you pay me back half of everything I bought for you?" Then there were a few other angry texts that involved personal information, so I'm not going to include them, but they were enough to prompt me to block him. I thought this would be the end of it, but then I started receiving no caller ID phone calls nonstop. I ignored all of them until he finally seemed to get the message and stopped. The next day, when my parents weren't home, I got home from work to find a bouquet of flowers on the stoop along with a card. The card was an apology from Hunter asking for a second chance. He somehow knew where I lived. That disturbed me. In his mind, he somehow must have thought that this would come off as charming or sweet when in reality it was extremely alarming. I sent a long and final text to him to please not contact me anymore and never come to my house again, or I'd file for a restraining order. I kept his number blocked so I wouldn't see his response. I thought things would be over now, but I couldn't be more wrong. It was not long after this that I was home alone for the night. My parents' house is big and I had a loft bedroom, which meant my bedroom was the highest point in the house. I awoke in the middle of the night to something. I wasn't sure what it was at first, but I felt as though I was hearing noises from downstairs. I tried my best to listen closely, and then I heard what was very obviously a door opening from outside my bedroom. One of the upstairs doors. Nobody was supposed to be home that night. Even in my haze from freshly waking up, I still immediately thought intruder. I crawled out of my bed onto the floor and shimmed under the bed before calling 911. I texted everyone in my family asking who's home. I heard some distant noises from somewhere in the home, one of the other bedrooms, and then my bedroom door opened and footsteps came up the carpeted stairs after they reached the top step. There was silence. The whole room was carpeted, so I couldn't hear any potential footsteps. Steps, and then I heard the drawers next to my bed begin opening. I held my mouth with my hands to mask my breathing. I could feel my heart racing. I heard a man's voice say, "God." Damn it, under his breath. In that moment, I thought, wait. That might have sounded like Hunter's voice. I still didn't move, and I prayed my phone did not get any notifications. Now I heard more rummaging sounds. He was going through my entire dresser. Then I heard and felt the bed move. As he sat down, I was staring at the outline of 2 shoes through the bed skirt. Even in the dark, it was visible. I don't know what he was doing on the bed, but he sat there for over 2 or 3 minutes before getting up, and I heard him say under his breath, "Fing." I heard all the drawers close, and then I heard footsteps walk back down the stairs. The door shutting, and then sounds of footsteps walking down the stairs to the living room. I called 911 now, and I still whispered into the phone just to be safe. I stayed on the line and stayed under the bed for 10 to 15 minutes until one of the police officers showed up, and I went down to meet them at the front door, and even that was tense after letting him in. I told him everything he didn't already know from the phone call he responded to. As such, he did a sweep of the house, and during that, another officer arrived. This one female who also assisted in the search. It turned out every window was unlocked, and one of the windows, the dining room one, is big enough for someone to crawl through. Though I don't think anyone ever pictured someone squeezing through the bush in front of the window and then crawling through it. I gave a verbal statement of everything. I was given a report number, and they left when my parents returned home the next day. They already knew everything from my text and phone call. With them, we went to the police station with my report number and gave as much information as possible, such as text screenshots, including him admitting he was following me home. They said they'd investigate, though. Without solid proof, it was him inside the house. It was tricky. I think the case lost steam when I really didn't have any proof of anything. I did, however, successfully get a restraining order against him, and I was advised to never accuse him of having broken in nor ever contact him again. He thankfully didn't, but from that point till the moment I moved out of my parents' house, I was always uncomfortable. He would be creeping around outside. Even today, I sometimes fear he might find out where I currently music live. I was in the 6th grade when this happened. This all started on the week of Halloween when I would stay after school to help decorate a haunted house for my school's Halloween carnival. I often got to stay and fool around with some of my friends while getting awarded with pizza for helping decorate. Along with my friends, there was also this other kid who would stay late. I'll call him Chris. We had gotten along for the entirety of the time that we would stay after school, and he never once gave me any reason to feel uneasy around him. He was genuinely a funny and cool kid. But anyway, fast forward 2 weeks, I was suddenly approached by a group of girls in my grade who were all excited and had wide grins on their faces. I asked them what was going on, only for them to tell me that I had a secret admirer and that he would be texting me tonight. Now, I'd be lying to you if I told you that I wasn't excited or at the very least curious about this. I wanted to know who later that night. When I was about to go to sleep, I got a notification from Messenger. It was the only app I had at the time that I always used to communicate with my parents whenever I was home alone. The message was from Chris. I had completely forgotten that I added him on Facebook on Halloween. I opened the message and it read, "Maya, I need to talk to you." I was concerned and quickly replied, "Yeah, what's going on, everything?" Okay. To this day, I wish I hadn't replied. The typing bubbles appeared and stayed there for a good 2 minutes, which meant that he was still typing. It felt like forever until his message finally came through. I didn't expect what came next. In a long paragraph, he confessed his love for me and how I've been driving him crazy since Halloween. He also proceeded to explain how he tried to impress me during recess and fed with his soccer skills, but that I never seemed to notice him. He said that he was growing tired of being ignored, and it ended with, "I want you to notice me. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, will you be my girlfriend?" I cringed at every word. I stared at the message for a long time. What the hell? I barely even know this kid and I drifted apart from him a long time ago. I was trying to come up with a way to let him down easily as I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I told him I didn't like him like that and that I wanted to just be friends. I could tell right away that he didn't like this answer. He kept asking me why, and I had to come up with a reason each time until he eventually stopped answering. The next morning was a nightmare for me. Some of his friends kept coming up to me and telling me that Chris wanted to kiss me, which he told the entire grade he wanted to do and that he would do it, even if it meant cornering me, taking this as a threat. I decided to tell my teacher. She told me to stay inside during recess and lunch, and that if he ever got even close to me, to run right back to the classroom. This wasn't enough for me. I reported him to the principal, who told me he would do something right away, and this gave me some relief. I feel I should mention that I lived right across the street from my school, and everyone knew this, including Chris, which leads me to what happened next. Later on in the week, I was walking home from school. I hadn't even been inside my house for more than 2 minutes before I heard someone knocking on my front door. I peeked out the window just in time to see someone ducking behind a parked car across the street. It had to be Chris. He must have been following me. My mom opened the door to find a piece of paper on the floor, and not surprisingly, it was addressed to me. I read the note out loud, and it said there was a surprise waiting for me under the Cadillac in my driveway, which at the time belonged to my brother. My mom went to check only to find nothing, but it was after this day my brother's Cadillac stopped working. I still have no idea what Chris did to the car, but my brother was forced to sell it. Unfortunately, my nightmare doesn't end there. I was constantly harassed by Chris's friends telling me to give him a chance and that he would treat me right. There was even a moment when I caught Chris taking a picture of me walking home, and the only reason I saw him was because I barely heard the sound of an iPhone camera behind me. Who knows how many photos of me he had on his phone, and every morning I woke up to a message from him with something along the lines of, "I can't wait to see you at school," or "I bet you'll look beautiful today." The harassment and stalking were only getting worse, and it was making me fear for my safety, especially now that he knew where I lived. Finally, I got a call into the counselor's office, and I felt relieved, expecting her to tell me that Chris was going to get in trouble or that the cops would get involved. Anything instead. What I heard was worse. The counselor proceeded to tell me that boys will be boys, that they do crazy things when they're in love, and that I shouldn't be mad about this. She told me I should feel flattered, as this kind of stuff was bound to happen, and that the only thing I could do was to accept it and learn from it. At the time, I didn't see the problem with her words, as I genuinely believed her, but looking back on it now, this was an insane and disturbing thing to say to a sixth grader who was being sexually harassed and who was fearing for her safety. Almost every day that afternoon, I came home from school telling my mom everything the counselor told me, and she was rightfully furious. I was called to the principal's office again, that same week, this time with my mom present. I remember very clearly my mom telling the counselor and principal, "What are you waiting for something bad to happen to her before you do something?" She continued to ask why it was taking so long for something to be done. They both stayed silent. My mom ended it by threatening the counselor and telling her to never speak to me again unless she was present, but unfortunately, I don't think the school ever did punish Chris, which to this day enrages me. He basically got away with everything. It doesn't even end there. One night, during the weekend when my parents had gone shopping, I was about to go to bed after watching a YouTube video on my iPad when I heard something at my window. Now I'm on the second floor, so this was especially strange. The only thing that hits my window are birds accidentally flying into it. I sat up listening, leaning. Then it happened again. It sounded as if someone had thrown something at the glass. Then it happened again and again. They were consistent thuds, and it was starting to freak me out. I finally got the courage to get up from my bed and see what it was. My heart dropped into my stomach when I opened the curtain and looked down to see Chris holding a handful of rocks looking up at my window. He somehow had managed to figure out which window was mine. He was about to throw another when he noticed me. I could ever so slightly see that he was saying something, but I didn't stop to see what I remember, going to see if every window and door was locked, and thankfully everything was. When I returned to my room, I received 4 messages from Chris. "Why did you leave? I just want to talk. I'm sorry. All they wanted was a kiss. Please forgive me. You are not who I thought you were. Bye." I blocked him after that. Thankfully, I never had another incident, even though I had to see him throughout the entirety of my school years from 6th grade to senior year. The last thing I heard about him was that he was arrested. God only knows, for what the saddest and scariest part of my story, though, is the fact that a counselor was comfortable with telling me that this kind of behavior was a compliment and a learning experience for me. As a girl, I just hope that woman no longer works with children and that I never have to see Chris again. Music. I want to stay as anonymous as possible with this. This was a very serious occurrence that I have PTSD about, and unfortunately, it scarred me. I'm changing all towns and names in the story, so there's no way it gets traced back to me. I've been a very reclusive person most of my life. It started at a young age. Even in my early school years, my teachers would tell my parents. I had antisocial behavioral problems. I would even be included in some of the, I guess you would say, special 20-minute classes for speech and behavior in elementary school. At the time, I didn't comprehend why I was being brought there while the rest of my class wasn't. Middle school was when the pressures of the social hell that school has really started to set in. Kids started forming their friend groups, and that only carried over into high school and got worse. I never had learning disabilities or anything. I just had social issues which had gotten better as I've grown older, but I would still consider myself an awkward, introverted person. However, I've made my close friends and I'm grateful for that. But now let's talk about girls. Of course, being a social recluse comes with having trouble with the ladies. Honestly, not to get too graphic, but it means something to my story. I lost my virginity at 21. That's a bit late. I'd say this was at the age of 23. I moved out of my parents' place. Already, I had been working a high-paying job in my field for a couple of years at that point already. And I bought a townhouse in my hometown. It was pretty affordable, but a nice and big townhouse. I don't live there anymore, but it was 2 floors. It was the kind of place that would impress girls at 23 if you owned it. So one day, swiping on Tinder, I matched a pretty decent looking girl. I'll call her Emily. We went on a date at a nearby restaurant for dinner. I was a little in my head thinking she was judging me or I was acting awkward, and by the end of it, I felt like she'd never want to see me again. But when I was in bed after getting home, she told me she really liked me and had fun, and I was ecstatic, honestly. So we went on a second, third, and fourth date, and honestly, things felt great after I got out of my head. We became boyfriend-girlfriend fairly quickly, but the honeymoon phase didn't last forever. When you first start seeing someone, you get excited anytime they text or call you. You crave the attention because ideally it's a two-way thing, but slowly I started feeling as though she was texting me maybe a bit too much at all times of the day. She'd ask where I was, if I was doing something, or perhaps took my time in responding. She'd call me or send question marks to follow up. One day, when we were on the couch, she demanded we share our locations with each other. I wasn't thrilled about this. Even though I had nothing to hide, I did it anyway. So we're a couple months into the relationship, our location shared. And this is where things went really sour. She'd start asking me why I was at Phil's house and not answering her texts. It got so bad that one night, when I was with Phil and my friend Mark in Phil's basement on a Friday night, she actually showed up to his house and Phil's mom walked Emily downstairs. She didn't even hide the fact that she was pissed at me and immediately spoke in a loud voice, almost a yell, reprimanding me for goofing around at Phil's house. Instead of answering her text about going to some winery the following day, I asked her if we could discuss this later, but she insisted I leave with her. I apologized to my friends and went outside with her. We had an argument in the street. She wanted to come home with me, but I told her no. We both drove separately, obviously, so I drove home and told her not to follow me. When I got home, I sent her a long text telling her we need a break and I need space. Should I have done this in person? Yeah, probably text message breakups aren't fair most of the time. But honestly, in the moment, I was scared of what her reaction would be in person. Of course, she started calling me over and over, blowing up my phone with texts. When I eventually stopped answering, I got aggressive pounds at my front door of my townhouse and constant rings from the doorbell. It got so bad that my neighbor actually came out and asked her what she was doing. I heard Emily screaming at him that I'm a piece of he and this and that, and my neighbor calmly told her to go home. I listened to everything with my ear, basically up to the door. She did leave, and honestly, I was kind of disturbed. I'm not saying the crazy just came out of nowhere. There were definitely signs, but I was blind to some of it because of the honeymoon effects. The next day, I remembered to stop sharing my location with her, and immediately, as if she were obsessively checking our texts, She angrily blows me up for doing that. I was more and more sure of my decision to cut ties with her. Every text she sent, my final text to her was, "I'm sorry, Emily, I have to block you for a while, you're scaring me." She surprisingly didn't come knocking or anything. However, I noticed she instantly stopped sharing her location as well. It was exactly 1 week later, I went over to Phil's house again and chilled with the guys I left around 11:10 p.m. and got home shortly after. I wasn't tired and I was hungry, so I threw some food in the microwave and popped on the couch to watch a movie. I was browsing all the streaming apps for something good. I wanted a scary movie when the microwave beeped and it went silent. I suddenly heard a click or thud from the dining room, so the layout of the downstairs of the townhouse, it looped around in a circle. It went from the kitchen to dining room to living room to den, and they were all separated by a wall in the middle. However, the dent of the dining room had a door, not an opening. I attached this photo to give a better idea to allow for complete silence. I grabbed the TV remote and muted the TV, and it was then that I surely heard the door separating the den and the dining room clicking open. I peered into the dining room. I blurted out, "Who's in here?" to, of course, nothing in response. I entered the dining room, my blood running cold as I saw that door was opened. I have a thing for keeping doors in my home shut, and that door was no exception. I went to the kitchen and grabbed the biggest knife from the knife block. I also called 911 right away. I had never called 911 once in my life. This was a first on the phone. I spoke really loud so that whoever was in there would hear that I was on the phone with the police. Whether this was a good idea or not, I guess, is debatable. I said, "I think my crazy ex-girlfriend has broken into my house. Please send someone." The rest of that call was explaining what exactly was going on, why I thought it was my ex, and her instructing me to wait outside if possible. So I went outside and waited not far from the front door. Surprisingly quickly, a police car rolled up. I once again briefly explained what I thought was going on, and I led the officer into my home. We both performed the most thorough search of the place together, and I'm telling you, no one was in there. We checked the mini crawl space hidden in the closet. We checked every closet for that matter. We checked under the beds, under the couches, even the mini attic too, when the coast was quite literally clear. He told me to call again if I heard anything, which said to me that he believed me and knew I wasn't making it up or going crazy. My night was obviously disturbed after that. No way I was going to be able to sit in the living room and watch a movie. Now, I ate my food, which had been sitting in the microwave, and went up to my room and locked the door. I texted all my friends and family, of course, about how spooked I was. But given that no one was in there, I had to dismiss it as just one of those creepy moments of something in the house moving by itself. I almost texted Emily, but refrained from doing so. I took a melatonin, and from what I remember, I quickly drifted off to sleep surprisingly. However, I'm a light sleeper and something caused me to wake up. I didn't know what it was, but something in the room felt off. I checked my phone and I had a bunch of texts from a random number that must have been what woke me up. I quickly realized it was Emily in short, without reading the paragraph she sent me. She was stating how sorry she was and that she wanted to talk. She was begging me to see her to talk tomorrow in person, and the rest of the texts were her saying, "Are you awake?" and "Wake up" over and over. She said "wake up" a total of 8 times over text. Surprisingly, she hadn't tried calling me, though. I responded, "Why are you awake right now? This is crazy that you're blowing me up at an hour like this. Honestly, if I wasn't sure before, you're just these past few days alone have confirmed that I don't want anything to do with you anymore. Please just leave me alone." Seconds after I pressed send, I heard a scream from inside of the closet next to my bed. It was Emily's voice yelling the word "no," and then the closet door burst open. I didn't have time to think of anything besides jumping out of the bed and getting that bedroom door open and getting out of the room. It wasn't locked anymore. Mind you, once out of the room, I pushed the door shut and held it shut. As she tried opening the door, she didn't just try opening it though. She started stabbing the door, and I saw the knife she was wielding piercing through my side. In the moment, I decided to scream, "Baby, I love you, stop," instead of something like "you're sick and you need help" when I said I loved her. She stopped and calmed down, and I took this moment to call 911 again, silently, while still holding the door shut. At this moment, We spoke through the door to each other while I had 911 on the line, and I came up with some on the spot that I was going through a rough time right now, but that I loved her and was planning on getting back with her. She said in a frantic voice, "That's all I wanted to hear. Why couldn't you just be honest with me?" She asked me to open the door. I had to stall though. I told her I was scared and wanted her to drop the knife. Eventually, she agreed, and I told her to throw it across the room so I could hear it land. She did, so I heard the clang of the knife ricocheting off the wall and onto the floor. So, what I did next, I yanked the door open and tackled Emily to the floor. She screamed and fought and went hysterical. I didn't care. I held her down as I yelled my address and everything into the phone, which was still connected to 911. I held her down all the way until the police arrived, to my surprise. The police literally kicked the front door down, and it was so loud it could be heard over Emily. Struggling all the way upstairs, police entered the room quickly, a surprising amount of police. Actually, Emily was put in cuffs quickly, and she was hysterically crying. I think the only reason I wasn't crying was because I was in such shock. This was the worst, most scarring night of my life. The nightmare didn't end there, though there was such a long and serious legal process that followed. As far as getting Emily convicted, I never wanted my name or any info to be out there on the internet to end up on one of those crime YouTube channels, so I've been careful about leaking too much information that could get back to me. Emily's imprisoned for some very serious charges. No part of that makes me happy. This was someone I spent a little chunk of my life with. More or less every day, someone I thought I loved, someone who tried to kill me. She was not right in the head, and it still pains me how oblivious I was. Not only because of how infatuated I became at first, but because of my own lack of self-confidence to a degree that I was so focused on impressing her at first that I didn't even pay attention to certain alarming behaviors on her part early on. I know this will stick with me forever, and honestly, even if anonymously, it would feel good to get the story out there finally if it's chosen to be read.